From 187,000 overwhelmingly positive reviews to 70,000+ overwhelmingly negative reviews. How does this happen from Slay the Spire 1 to Slay the Spire 2, dragging the sequel down to a mostly mixed rating on Steam? Well, this is how. This woman right here, by herself, not even the woman herself doing anything, but merely her appearance in the credits of Slay the Spire 2 is what did this. That is a remarkable, Nurgle level of aura of corruption and rot right there. Very few individuals, other than Mengele or the Austrian painter, can brag about having an equally devastating reputation, and even those lads would find some tough competition in the modern day here. Now, this has actually been going on for a little while, as the Steam forums for the game itself spotted Anita Sarkeesian in the credits quite a while ago, as if we search for Anita Sarkeesian, we will find 1,211 separate mentions. 122 pages. That is quite something right there. And this brings up some very interesting ethical and strategic questions, in my opinion. So, first and foremost, in case you are unaware, Slay the Spire is a deck-building roguelite game. The first game became very, very popular and was near universally beloved. Then they announced a sequel, Slay the Spire 2, with more in the way of production budget and a pretty damn cool little intro animation here as well. The game came hot off the success of the predecessor, and everyone expected a similar degree of success, but it didn't quite come, as I do believe this is something like the third review bomb the game is currently experiencing. And here's the thing, a lot of the reason why this is such a big deal isn't merely due to the witch herself, although Anita's aura of rot is quite powerful, for you see, one of the main ethical concerns and strategic questions we might want to discuss right now is, and I've belabored this point at length previously, we, as our side begins to rise in cultural prominence, do not wish to become like the left, whose even slightest transgression against itself becomes an unforgivable sin for which there is no redemption. If you ever err against the orthodoxy of progressivism, you are cast from its hallowed halls forever as a heretic and a very, very bad person. And seeing as we just did a video covering what happens to those bad people, that is a severe consequence indeed. And I have long argued that we should not be like that. There must be some sort of a path to redemption on the right, free of unmitigatable sin. But if there is one individual who perhaps should not be able to cleanse themselves of the stink, then that might very well be Anita Sarkeesian. Not because she had a particularly large impact upon video games development, although that too can be debated. See, many have ludicrous, English is a difficult language on occasion, mocked the living hell out of Anita Sarkeesian's videos, who are, by modern day progressive standards, in fact rather amateurish. A large part of the left, too, has turned against her very shallow critique of video gaming. But it cannot be forgotten that she was in many ways the first that caused a huge apparently, portion of the then suppression, censorship, and general decline of games, and not just video games, but entertainment in general, that would follow in her wake. We can lay a great deal of the blame for that decline at the feet of Anita and her simpish defenders. Her effect has been out of all proportions to her actual popularity or the success of her career, which is now mostly over anyways. So, if there is somebody who should be considered tainted, it might be her, as I want to point out as well. This was, of course, indeed the progressive tactic. There were people on our side who were simply tainted by association and could not be accepted into any polite society. I myself has been cancelled over this multiple times. One of the most famous with World of Warships, where I made a ad, of quote-unquote, of one of their new DLC ships with a 40k skin. I did it, made a good video, they praised me for it, saying that I'd done a good job representing the ship, etc. They even wanted to promote my video on it. I put it up. I initially even didn't ask to be paid, because I was simply like, oh, a 40k thing. Of course I'll do something about that. That's gonna be fun. Then, after they'd confirmed it in their manual review, praised it, said everything is fine, put it up, pushed it, then they got the mob after them saying, oh well, this is a no-no person and we must cancel anything he is in. Even then, they still paid me, otherwise it would be breach of contract, but that was, of course, then a consequence of their ideology, that they cannot accept anyone on the opposite side, very much so created by the witch herself. Is there therefore any level of unfairness or some degree of sin in applying Anita Sarkeesian and her ilk's standards to themselves? I don't believe so. Again, I do believe there should be some form of a path to redemption, but not always. There are those who have proven themselves to be inherently distrustworthy, those who just aren't of pure intentions, and Anita is one of them. Now, does that then extend to condemnation of Slay the Spire 2 as well? This is where it further gets interesting. So, this is not the first review bombing of Slay the Spire, as you can see here. In fact, it's taken more than one severe beating over the years. And, well, has it been out even a year now? Turn of phrase. As I was playing this game myself, because it was very popular, and Slay the Spire 1 was very popular, so I figured, okay, this is one of those games I should probably stream. Plus, I do like the idea of roguelike deck builders. That does appeal to me. But as I was playing it, I was thinking to myself, well, I can see why this is popular, because it is, I wouldn't say fun. I definitely wouldn't say fun. I don't think fun is the word I'd use, but it was weirdly addictive in the same way that randomly smashing your testicles with a ball-peen hammer might be interesting if you're into that sort of stuff. But a lot of complaints on the forums in general came about certain balancing decisions, for example, as my overall impression of the game was of a game that wasn't difficult by particularly careful design, but more a game that was difficult out of actively aggressive design, which, as I have been informed later on, apparently wasn't so much a feature of the first game. It was absolutely designed to be balls hard, and a game that you would fail at the majority of the time rather than succeed, but it wasn't actively punitive. This is something that another Steam game also has had a lot of problems with, Darkest Dungeon, a game that received rave reviews initially, but then petered off steadily as the developers engaged at another thing that I've often covered, developer versus player, where the developers themselves feel somehow personally insulted by exploits or abilities that the players develop in order to beat the video game. You know, the intended fucking goal of the game itself. And therefore move to quash these things in some sort of arms race between the players and the developers, which only lead to the majority of people being pissed off, because 98% of the players don't even know about these exploits. All they know is that their game is suddenly becoming inexplicably more punishing and in ways that simply feel cheap and exploitative and unfair. That is part of the reason. It's also, I believe, been in some language localization difficulties. Don't piss off the Chinese market, they get rather vengeful, to put it mildly. But this one, over Anita Sarkeesian, is of course rather different from this, although it is connected. I believe that if Slay the Spire 2 had simply been one, a genuinely beloved experience, then the revelation that Anita Sarkeesian had worked on the game in an advisory capacity, which, by the way, as I've played the game, it has no real sense of wokeism or anything like that in it. In all due likelihood simply means that Slay the Spire's owners or publishers or whatever, as I presume they might have one. No, I think they're self-published, Megacrit. Looked upon the world and said, well, you know, we've got to pay the Veer Guild here. We've got to play the blood debt to be protected from certain groups of people. So just bring on this woman to just proofread the documents, etc., and make sure that we don't get any backlash from that group of people. Or indeed, there are people on the staff who are genuinely of that political persuasion, but who hasn't had enough effect on the game to cause any overt damage to it. Who then thought, okay, well, you know, we gotta bring her on. She's famous, there we go, my English today, famous person, or simply the invincible syndrome, where they bring up overpaid voice actors simply because somebody on the staff wants to meet them. That is in all due likelihood the explanation for Anita Sarkeesian's presence on the credits of Slay the Spire 2, which, I mean, it's not the grandest of sins, is it? So long as the game itself remains good, and again, that can be somewhat debated in the case of Slay the Spire 2. Should this mean that we simply rip it up by the root and reject the entire damn thing because of association alone? 9 times out of 10, I would say no. Because it is not a wise strategic move, nor is it, I believe, a particularly ethical move. Again, we need a path to redemption. In the case of Anita, however, the primordial witch herself, I am far more inclined to accept that argument because, well, the old saying that one rotten apple spoils the barrel is, of course, a truism. That does happen because of the various gases released by the poisoned apple, or the rotten one, that then turns all of the others rotten. And in the case of our current culture and entertainment at large, we have seen that phenomenon repeated again and again and again and again. The proverbial rotten apple is very much so real and has an undisputed, repeatedly proven negative effect on anything it is associated with. And Anita, she's pretty much the biggest of all of those apples. So if there was ever an argument for throwing the baby out with the bathwater, Slay the Spire 2 is kind of sort of it. I haven't really fully arrived at a conclusion one way or the other, and at the end of the day, I wasn't even that particularly fond of the game, even as I was playing it. It was, again, addictive in a weird way, where I kind of just wanted to beat it to demonstrate that I could, and eventually I did, and after that, it's like, okay, well, do I really want to start another 30-40 minute run where I could simply be cockblocked into oblivion because the game literally did not give me the things I needed to pass a very specific boss? No, probably not. So, very interested to hear what everybody has to say about this, now that it's beginning to get a lot of more mainstream appeal as well, that Anita Sarkeesian's name has become publicly known in the credits. Is this a case where, if you like the game, you ignore it, because in all due likelihood, her sole and singular contribution to the game is her name in the credits and nothing else? Or is this indeed a spoiled, now utterly rotten barrel of apples to you? I'm interested in seeing what everybody in chat thinks about that. And until next time, I, as always, have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching. I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.